to fill?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think we understand like the rotation. I think obviously bringing Michael back was huge. I think that was an important part of it, and I think getting Joe back will be obviously big on and off the field. But continuing to add to the starting pitching side of things, I think we understand the bat. I think probably multiple bats, and I think exactly like that first base DH, kind of rounding out the bench. Those are some areas that we're going to look to address here in the next few weeks.
You've done a lot of work in the past years at this time, leading into spring training and in spring training. How comfortable are you with that process of kind of this 11th hour?
Yeah, I mean it's one of the bigger changes I think in baseball over the last like 10 years or so. It used to be like you get to the winter meetings, and now it's kind of turned the page towards next season, and the transaction part of it got done kind of between GM meetings and right around the middle of December. Now it feels like all of us, you guys are working right up until or at times we've been obviously into Peoria, and Pavetta, Machado, Dylan Cease into spring training. So I don't think it really ever it doesn't really ever end. There's no like deadline on transactions, and you kind of get to this point, and obviously you get the opportunity to hopefully get some players that are motivated, that want to be here, get some deals that we feel like are line up for us from a price standpoint and how we're valuing the player. So kind of working right up until spring training, and hopefully we're gonna look to add some guys here in the next couple of weeks that help us a lot.
Added several guys like Marco Gonzalez, Tristan McKenzie, guys who have had a track record or maybe had some injury issues. When you're bringing in guys like that, how much do you look at a guy like Ruben Niebla to say maybe that you can cook something else out of him, or just maybe like track record, health? What goes into signing guys like that?
Yeah, I think a combination of obviously it starts with like a scouting group that from an evaluation point, like thinks that hey, there's either some bounce back or upside, or getting a player maybe when they're down. I think that's important, and then turning it over to a pitching group that's demonstrated time and again that they've done a really good job with it. So I think the combination of you look at the last 5 or 6 years, we've had a lot of pitchers come here and they've performed. Whether it was kind of that first wave of Darvish and Snell and Musgrove, and then Waka and Lugo, and then Cease and King, and Pavetta last year. So I think it's a combination of making good evaluations, and then putting into a pitching environment with Ruben leading it, Ben Fritz, Peter Somerville, Mike Borzello. These guys do a great job of kind of addressing, this is maybe another step that you can take in your development. Some of those guys you mentioned, getting them healthy, I think that's a big part of it, and trying to find some ways to do that. And we've got a group that's done that well, and hopefully we get a couple more with Tristan and Marco that come in here and do a good job.
How confident are you in Gavin Sheets as an everyday first baseman?
Yeah, I mean Gavin he was big for us last year, and he's going to get a crack to to get at bats. I think it's going to be, again, it's competition, but in terms of like Gavin taking at bats, he's had a great offseason. I think for him, we've kind of talked to him about, hey, here's where you've at. You put yourself kind of back on the map, and real part of what we've done. But there's steps to be had to see can you make some more improvements. But he'll get that opportunity here, spring training into the season, to take on some of those at bats. And then we'll probably look to add and add somebody that either complements Gavin, competes with Gavin. But just again, like I think. I said it to Kevin Acey yesterday or something that we'll have somebody playing first base for us on opening day. So throws won't be going into the camera well, and you'll be dodging them whoever's in there. So we'll be okay, I think.
Usually a good tactic to have all 9 positions manned at some point.
Hey, that's why we try to do our jobs, line up 9 guys. So it starts with that.
You're talking about all the pieces that you need to add, but do you feel that do you still need to cut payroll?
To cut payroll more, you said?
Yes. Do you need to shed some payroll?
No, I think we're we have our, like we've done in past years. We have our budget. Again, we're in a spot where we, you consider all different options as you go into the off season, and some have been making trades and deals that would have taken the payroll down. But in terms of where we're at now, like we feel like it's more about adding to the club. We're not in a spot where we have to do anything because of a payroll situation. It's go around the team out and go compete and play. That's kind of that's where we're looking at it right now.
You've maintained consistently that San Diego is where you want to be. Eric Grupner says weekly that you guys are still in talks. They want you in San Diego. Can you tell us why you haven't gotten a deal done yet, and do you expect it to happen soon?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think part of the timing piece, I think a little bit is on me in terms of, you get into these off seasons. I know we haven't been super transactional. We did the Michael King move, and we added Song, but it's like the focus on winning and putting a team together and free agents and trades. I'm not great at, kind of like focusing on anything other than that this time of year. So I think that's been part of it. And ultimately, I think I've been very consistent. I think you guys know, pretty realistic when it comes to making deals and what it looks like. And I think the biggest thing is, just in terms of I think when win-win deals is when everybody's fair and they're honest and realistic. And I expect something to get done, continuing to talk, and again, looking forward to continue to talk about the team and the what we're trying to do to put a better team on the field. So that's been the focus.
Does the sale have any impact on that as well, or has it thrown any wrinkle in things?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, we've talked about it as business as usual. I think overall, I think it's definitely not just on my situation. I think in general, when you talk about knowing, hey, you're not in a sale process versus an owner is going to be here, Peter and Ron, for 10 plus years, and that's not there. That's at least conversation. But in terms of what we're trying to do, on the field, my situation, it's been just again straight up conversation, myself and John, and hoping to try to get something done here soon.
Does it impact talking with potential free agents?
No, I mean, again, I think the conversations we've had, it really hasn't been brought up a lot by the free agents we're talking to. I think it's again, how we've operated, it has been, here's our budget, this is what we have to do. We've been willing to talk about multi-year deals. We obviously signed Michael to a multi-year deal. We've been looking to add into the future, and it hasn't really been something that other agents have brought up to us, as we've gone through the process. I think it's more of here's our budget, this is what we have to work with. If there's a situation that comes up that extends that, or if we want to take that down, no real different. I talked to the conversation between Josh and myself and John Seiler. We have that conversation, we go from there.
Is the potentially looming lockout complicating things, conversations, player additions, anything along those lines?
Yeah, I kind of went into the offseason not really sure how that was going to play out. Obviously, throughout the industry, it doesn't really feel like it's impacted too much. I think our conversations, not too much either, honestly. I think it feels like agents and clubs are operating in a way that, hey, what's best for us right now and the future, and I don't feel like things have really been changed much by the possibility of what goes on with the labor situation in the next year.
Is there any update on Darvish?
Yeah, I mean, on you, it's again, we're working through the process with him. I think he's I've had a lot of conversation with you throughout the off season, and I think he's been super clear, with what's important to him. I think from our standpoint, he's a very unique player. He's a very unique individual. We've got a great relationship. He's got a great relationship with the organization. He's been clear from the beginning that he's not going to do something that his heart isn't into, or he wants to make sure that the organization is strong and he's able to to help in any way possible. That's been on the field a lot, but he also wants to continue to help in all different ways. So we will continue to work through it and continue to hopefully have a little bit more clarity here as we go over the next couple of weeks.
Manny and Xander have been these in the past. Do you know anything about their off season that's keeping them from coming?
Yeah, no, I talked to all those guys. They've had good off seasons. We have regular conversation. I think in Xander's case, got a family commitment that we were aware of. That's important for him. And Manny, again, Manny, again, regular communication there. Prior commitment for Manny. Manny's, 2 years ago is our representative from the Roberto Clemente Award. He's been to Fan Fest. He really understands and appreciates what the fans mean and what this event means. But again, I think for Manny, we'll see him in spring training in a couple of weeks. He'll be ready to roll, and talk to him all the time. And I think he's excited about the year.
Do you expect Darvish to be around the team in some form, no matter what kind of agreement you guys ultimately reach? Let's say you buy out his contract. Do you think, are there ways for him to still be around the team?
Yeah, I mean, he's expressed interest again. He's a Padre. He's moved to San Diego. I think you know, he's obviously, you know, on the field. He's pitched some really big games and some big moments for us. And, you know, I think throughout this whole process, he's been consistent that, you know, if it's on the field, he's going to do what he can from a rehab standpoint to do that. But also he wants to be around it. He wants to help others, you know. And he said that a couple of years ago, you know, when he was the 24 season and he was on the restricted list. You know, he was, again, dealing with other situations and other commitments. But as we were talking a lot, he's like, you know, he gets a lot of joy out of helping others, you know, and he's kind of had his moment where he's had a lot of great moments on the field. And, you know, this past year, Randy Vasquez, for example, like Darvish spent a lot of time helping Randy, talking Randy, and helping his development. So I think he's interested in doing more of that as he goes, giving back. The WBC team that we saw 2-3 years ago, the great team in Japan that won the WBC, Darvish was kind of a father figure and, you know, and had big time influence with that group. I think he's interested in more of those opportunities for the Padres over the next you know, few months and going forward.
Michael King said to ask you how you, Darvish, got him a few extra dollars. Could you elaborate on that?
That's between them, I guess. But yeah, I think it's just back to what we talked about with you, son. You know, we'll see. You know, again, like still kind of working through all the details, like, you know, you and Joe Wolf had mentioned. But for you, it's all about, like, you know, it's all about the Padres giving back, and you know, I think it's a very unique perspective. We saw it a few years ago. We've seen it a lot this offseason. He wants to help guys, you know, get better, develop, and he also wants to make sure from an organization standpoint that if he can't perform on the field, that the organization's in a good spot to continue to add talent. And, you know, I think with Michael, yeah, I think he weighed in on who the top free agent starters were and how he could help get them there. And yeah, I think he did. You know, he did his job of getting Michael signed, and I was excited about that.
And
One last question.
I'm sorry, Stammen said that there was no set player at DH. Would you like to see Manny get some more time? You know, keep the bat in there, get some more DH, and just maybe rest his body a little bit more this season?
I mean, I think that's something we'll talk about. You know, I think every year is a little bit different. I think for Manny, like, I think he, you know, again, Manny plays every day. So, you know, I think we understand that, you know, we'll kind of look at our current roster. We'll get into spring training. We'll see kind of where we're at. And you got to get into the season. I think that's a little bit fluid. It's nice, you know, to have a DH where you can rotate some really good position players through and get them off their feet for a day. But it only really works depending on how your roster's set up. And, you know, obviously if you have a DH that's performing in a big way, you want to get that bat in the lineup. So those are things we'll keep talking about. You know, I think as we kind of build the roster, and those are kind of fluid conversations with Craig. And, you know, I think making sure we use that spot the best way possible for our regular position players or for an impact bat, that's going to be the goal. So.
Thank you, Reggie.
Thanks, Reggie.